Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Couch Potato Queens Survivor Recap Podcast. I am joined, of course, by Survivor superfan and my wonderful Judy, Josh Mendelson. Josh,
Hey,
how are you
girl.
doing today?
Doing great. I'm excited for today. We are covering one of my favorite seasons of all time. True fact, Sam, I was actually grounded from this season when I was 12 years old by my mother and had to watch this episode on VHS tapes all the way through. So it is memorable to me.
It is memorable to you. It's memorable to me as well. Great season, some twists, some turns. Gameplay really evolved this season, I would say, more so than the previous three. And our special guest today is part of the reason that happened. He is our very first LGBT survivor that we've had on the show, which is so huge for us. We love seeing the gays compete, and boy, did he do great. So we are launching this interview for the 19-year anniversary of Survivor Marquesas. Folks, we have the trade of season 4. Put your clickers and mouses together for John Carroll.
Yay!
Hi, John.
19th anniversary. Can you believe it?
Can you believe it? John, tell
You got me so worked up in the preamble, in the green room while I was waiting for you that I had to burn some Palo Santo so I didn't say anything bad or bring any more bad juju on myself. So
they cast right for Marquesas, I'll just say that.
They did a great job with the casting, and I agree. Let's get all the negative energy out of here. John, tell us what you're up to these days. So last we heard on Survivor Marquesas, you were a registered nurse living and working in Omaha, Nebraska. What are you up to now?
So I work in Omaha. I live in Gretna, which is like a bedroom community just outside of Omaha. I was a registered nurse when I was on the show. And then I had actually dropped out of law school to go do the show. I was supposed to be on not supposed to, but I was in the running for season 3.
Oh,
and
wow.
They held me back for 4. But then, I lived in LA for, 8 years. So I knew enough about, don't call us, we'll call you kind of thing. So when I didn't make season 3, I just proceeded on with my life and started law school. Well, then all of a sudden they called and said, hey, we want you to come out to LA for the final 48. And I was in law school for 3 weeks at the time. So I had to make a decision whether to turn them down or to go ahead and drop out of law school and go and try to get on the show. There was no guarantee. I would be in the final 48, but they couldn't promise me anything more than that. So I talked with my dad and talked to the dean and assistant dean. And within like 20 minutes of me saying, here's what's going on, they're like, hey, once in a lifetime opportunity, go kill it, and we'll see you next year. And so that's how I ended up on season 4. And Robin Cass was our casting director because Lynn Spillman was on maternity leave. So until Lynn left the show, we were the only show she did not cast. So we're kind of like this weird mix. So we got the Lynn Spillman maternity thing, and then we had the reunion with Rosie and not Jeff. So, and then we had the worst location like ever in terms of bugs.
Oh, the no-nos.
The no-nos, yeah. So there's like a lot of weird little asterisks about our show that I feel like those that are maybe older production were just kind of persona non grata in certain ways, just because everything was just kind of off. And I don't know if and then we have 9/11, of course,
yeah,
that into the mix, of course. So yeah, we were a really interesting season for sure. But yeah, tomorrow would be the debut of the 19th anniversary of our first episode of Back to the Beach.
Yeah, which is incredible. We love to see it. I think part of what makes this season so exciting is all of those little things, are all of those little details that you talked about. I mean, Rosie O'Donnell hosted your reunion
and gave them all cars.
That had to be pretty fun.
Saturn View, mine was yellow.
Hey, I mean, I would go for a free car right about now. Now, you did tell us there was some interesting things going on with the casting process.
Oh, we want to hear.
Yeah, so you were picked for season 3. You're sort of in the running. They pulled you in for season 4. Talk to us about what the casting process. You said you made it to the top 48. Tell us about what that was like for you.
Sure. So I applied to the first 4 seasons essentially before I made the show. I applied to season 1 very, very late. As a matter of fact, as I was going through casting, they're like, how did we not like see like you in that first season? But it literally was like the day before I like FedExed it. And I think by that time they had their cast down. And to be honest, I don't know that I would have had a shot when they had Richard. You know what I mean? He was such a character. And then I applied to season 2 because once it got through the first season, I just fell in love. Once I saw the Outback, I was like, I got to do this. I'm going to move heaven to earth to try to make this happen. And then applied to season 3 and made it to the top, I think, what is it, like 768 or whatever that is. And I had to go up, I think, up to Wisconsin. And so what happened is when I went up there, one of the casting producers, if we had not met in that circumstance and we had met, in real life somewhere else, we would have been the best of friends. Mm-hmm. So what happened is we were just like had that like kismet right away. So that kind of ruthless player side of me didn't come out as much. It was more about just having fun and being funny and like just 2 people that really liked each other. But I didn't really show them that other potential side of me. So what ended up happening is it just kind of stalled out. And then, and so then because let's see here, then I come around with season 4. You know what? I'll take that back. I got to the final top again because now I had a different casting producer. That's right. Now it's coming back to me. So season 3 made it to that, and then I had heard. Gosh, I'm getting. It's been so long ago. All I know is I went to the semis twice. Okay. And I can't remember exactly where. It might even been like, God, was it even season 2? I can't remember, but whatever it was, I almost got to the semis. Or got to the semis twice. So the first time I had a person I was really bonded with and could have just been besties with, and then the next time I did, they got somebody to really challenge me on some really like significant things that are important to me, to where I almost forgot I was being interviewed because I kind of got like triggered. And the big trigger was he took on the role of kind of a homophobe, but not like hardcore, but just kind of conservative like thinking, and essentially said that he didn't think gays should be in the military. And this is before Don't Ask, or this is probably right at Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but we hadn't gotten like everything changed where now you can be out in the military. So it was kind of in that gap.
So much has changed since then. So much.
Yeah. So Don't Ask, Don't Tell would have been in the 90s. So this would have been, in the like 2000, 2001 timeframe. And I just remember he said that, and I was in the military, and I actually had to leave the military in the late 80s because there was not a Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I was afraid I would be kicked out, and it was extremely stressful. So I ended up leaving early for a bunch of different reasons, but one of the main ones was that I was having to live a lie, and they would do these witch hunts and follow you to gay bars and take pictures, and then they'd round you up. And really they were looking for officers, because if you were an officer and you had lied and said you were not gay when you were gay, they actually could put you in jail or make you pay back their money for what they spent for education and training. It was really, really dark time. Wow. So right when I got to this Air Force base in Belleville, Illinois, Scott Air Force Base, there was a kind of a roundup and a witch hunt, and they were, interrogating people and making them write down people that they knew. And so we called the hospital the Pink Palace, and so there was this secret group of us that kind of it's not like we had code words or passwords or whatever, but you kind of got to know your gaydar. And so you'd socialize off the base and all of that. And so just going through that whole process was really, really stressful. So Neil ended up saying to me, I just don't think, gays should be in the military. And I said, Neil, let me just tell you something, that, if we're at war and you and I are in a foxhole and there's like bullets and bombs going over our head, the last thing I'm going to say to you is, hey, Neil, can I suck your dick? We don't have to worry about that happening like at all. And his mouth just dropped open, and then he had this little smile, and it was like one of those like where like you were doing an acting scene and you nailed it and everybody's like, good, cut, let's move on. He wrapped up really quickly like after that, because whatever it was he was trying to get out of me to be able to get a glimpse, that was it. And to be honest, to this day, I still think it was that moment that changed the direction of me getting on the show. It wasn't until it was over with and I looked, I was like, that was a good one. You got me on that one.
Wow, they really
it was so
dig
personal
in.
to me. It was so personal to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, there's the way that we sort of, kiki with the other gays, but I can understand how particularly 20 years ago or 19 years ago, that was a shocking thing to say in an interview. And so I really congratulate you for being able to be authentic in that moment and clearly impressing the casting directors.
Ultimately, just because somebody is LGBT, whether they're gay, bisexual, transgender, or whatnot, there's just no reason why you can't serve.
No,
you're there to defend the Constitution. You're
Absolutely.
there to serve your country. I have a flag on my farm that flies,
Yeah.
And in June, I put the rainbow one right up next to it.
Awesome. Yay, Pride Month. So originally your season, I think, was supposed to be set in Jordan. It was supposed to be called Survivor Arabia. Did you know that this was actually happening? When you were casting, did you know that was location at the time? How aware were you guys of the whole situation of where it was going before you guys went to Marquesas?
I don't think initially it was kind of told to us, but I think somewhere during that final 48 that kind of got leaked out. So at some point, somewhere along the line, we ended up knowing that we were supposed to be in Jordan. And because of 9/11 and what was going on in the Middle East, that was no longer an option. And I wonder, because, a lot of people will, when they look at those original seasons and the fact that Africa was so problematic with parasites, being landlocked, that, the whole going back to the beach, because there was a question of whether or not, was a show going to be able to gather its legs underneath it. And I think a lot of people credit our season when we went back to the beach and that we gave them a good show, especially, a lot of people will say Marquesas was best really, right past the merge really with Rob and I. And then, and then once the alliance was being taken out and it got deeper into it, there were still some highlights that are there, but I think a lot of people give the strength of the first half of the season saying, it measures up against any first halves that are out there. But I think your season complain about the winners, or the final two.
Yeah, but here's the thing about your season, and I think one of the people who complains is Jeff Probst. For some reason, has some bad juju with Marquesas. I don't get it, because as a kid, Marquesas is one of my favorite seasons. If you do a Survivor rewatch, like a true fan that I am, I get excited when Marquesas is coming on because it's such a great cast. It's so diverse. So many different things are happening. You have blindsides. It's really the true first blindside of all time with your elimination. There's so many things. It's kind of unpredictable. You have a true villain with Boston Rob. You have Sarah and her breast. You have so many good things going on in the season. So I give you guys you guys deserve so much more credit for your season.
I agree. John, question for you though. So did you have a strategy going it? So you get the call, you're selected. How much prep time did you have? And were you doing any sort of planning even up until the moment that you hopped off that ship?
Mm-hmm. So good question. So I will tell you, and I've told other people this, and I tell people who are getting ready for the show, if you make it to the final interviews, you are playing the game. Like, you are already in the game because you're already competing against those final people. So for myself, when they did reach out and said they wanted me to come to LA for the final 48, I was in game mode like that moment. So I hit the gym every day. I had a workout partner that, we were I was already working out prior to that, but I was really like, let me do that. I put on extra weight.
Trade of the season, you were in great shape.
Yeah, and I kind of put on a few extra pounds before I got there, just so I'd have some little extra. But it was all kind of like fake weight because I like packed it on like in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But, just a few weeks because we got interviewed. We flew out the week after 9/11. And
wow.
Yeah. So, and a week or two after, because no, I think we were supposed to fly out the week after, and they pushed us back like one more week. So we didn't really, once we got to the final 48, we learned while we were out there that we made the show.
Oh, wow.
And so then we had to come back and then zip it and then get ready. So throughout that whole process, I was working out, putting on extra pounds just so I would have it when I got out there. And then even when I was at the final 48, at that time I was 36 years old. And I was looking around, to see who my competition would be. And it turns out, when I was looking at it, I knew that, I occupied obviously my LGBT lane, but I also, because that's not the way that neither CBS nor I approached it that way. And it was really cool because they said that, like, we're not trying to fill a demographic with you, and I believe them. Now, did it happen to help that, they had that? So I looked at, I was a mid-30s person. And so that was my competition. I was looking around plus minus 5 years to see who was in that lane and then really kind of focusing on them. And it turns out the guy who was the first Bachelor was my actual main competition going into the final. So
what's his name? Alex Michelle, right?
Yes. And he ended up going on the Bachelor. And so then even then going home and getting ready to fly out, it was, looking at the competition through as it was getting whittled down and less people were there because they were being sent home. You started looking around at like, who's going to be your competition. And then when we flew out, when we're on the plane, there's a lot of nonverbals. You're trying to like pick up energies. Then you get to the site. You're there for a few days doing some training and media and all that before the game starts. And you're sizing people up and, who's kind of giving you kind of an extrovert energy, who's kind of doing the opposite. So it's a lot of gamesmanship amongst some people. Some people were very, poker faced, really didn't give you much. Other people were, hey, I'm going to be this, the star of the season. So, and then once the game started, the gun went off and boom, the rest is history.
Hunger Games. No.
Yeah. Well, because we talked to Lindsay Richter and she said you really aren't allowed to interact with anyone of your other contestants before that gun goes off on the ship.
No, you don't.
So you're sort of scouting.
You don't. You go in shifts to eat.
Mm-hmm.
You're stuck in your tent when you're there in the tent city, and then they let you out for like an hour a day or whatever to exercise or get out of your tent. But you're like in these little silos all over the camp, and you're just kind of watching. Some people are reading, some people are exercising, some people are kind of giving a little head nod, a little smile here and there. Other people are like, don't even talk to me because, I'm a rule follower. And so I'm not going to try to scan or, figure anybody out.
I feel like that was Kathy.
Kathy was very much like that.
Yes, I'm good at this. I like this game. Yeah. John, can you
Kathy
tell me?
was very busy doing nothing in her silo, like, very like arranging things, but was like I'm all business here, people.
So who were you sizing up before the game started, before you even put on your tribes? Who were you sizing up? Who did you want to work with?
Tammy was always was my ride or die. Just when I first saw her, just the way she carried herself, her strength, her athleticism. There was just something about her that I just was always I gravitated towards. I love Nalia. She, from the jump, I just, she was 21, I was 36. She was like a little sister to me. And, if she didn't have Pappy, I think I would have been her Pappy. And also, I think because I wanted to play the game harder initially than as she was kind of sorting it out and so young, and just trying to, figure out, get her feet underneath her. And, it took her a while. And then obviously we know what happened when she finally did. Zoe was just a beast. I mean, she just was you could tell she was going to be a hard worker, but you could kind of get a sense that the game itself might be too big for her in the sense of trying to figure out how to do it. But she knew how to just work. I mean, she was just a strong human being. And the general, he was just, he was just cool, and he's loyal. Like, I mean, that dude is just a loyal man. And if he's got your back, he's like got your back. And I think that's that Italian in him. And for us, when we had our alliance, like that was going to be unshakable for him. Like, we had him for sure.
The classic Row 2-4 alliance. We'll be getting into that alliance soon.
And on top of it, you really were not trying to like telegraph exactly where your power alliance was, who your true, group was, because, when we were 8 strong forever, everybody was very social. Obviously we had our Kathy problem at the beginning and really all throughout the season until the swap. So, there was just this kind of core group that was kind of forming. And then because we were so early, like there wasn't a lot of other blueprints of how to do it, and so it just naturally felt like in our group having at least the 4, and if we could use that to get just 1 or 2 on our side and get the majority right away, no matter what, as soon as we got 1 of the other 4 out, then we would be in the advantage, and so our 5th was Gabriel. And until
really,
yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, actually, my top 3 were Tammy and Gabe.
What? So Gabe was a Row 2-4 almost. He was
he was. That's why he went home.
So okay, so then what would have like the pecking order been on Row 2? Let's say it was opposite because y'all slayed. Obviously, Row 2 is one of the most successful tribes ever. If you guys would have had to go to those first 3 tribal councils, how would have it gone? Obviously, Kathy first, like.
Yeah. So in our first 3 out, had we like what happened to Mata Amu, if it happened to us, it would have been probably Kathy, Pascal, and then Nalia.
What? That's insane.
Wow.
Nalia pre-jury. Shock.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The only person that I could see that might have been swapped out is if the general just never recovered because he was sick.
Yeah.
For 2 days, and we were trying to protect him. But if he had gotten to the point where if we had been losing and he became a liability, I think we would have swapped out the general for Nalia.
Honestly, I'm happy with what happened. So I'm happy y'all dominated. It was fun watching the Maramu tribe just fail.
I mean, classic. I mean, we were smaller, but we were smarter.
So can you tell us about those original dynamics on the Row 2 tribe? Because y'all were a machine. I mean, it was one of the tightest tribes and that didn't lose anyone. I mean,
15 days.
Yeah.
15 days before we saw Jeff at Tribal Council.
Yeah.
There's only a few seasons that have anything close to that. Where
right?
Our alliance but at the same time, that's what made it so awesome is when it got flipped on its head because we were so dominant, and then to see our downfall happen so quickly in such an epic way. I don't like being on the receiving end of it, but I also know that, hey, that is part of one of the major storylines of Survivor in 40 seasons is, the downfall of the Row 2-4 is a classic all-time, and I remember they had the season 30 anniversary and they did the top 10 favorite moments in Survivor history up through 30 seasons. Me going out in the Coconut Challenge was number 4
Yeah.
in the top 10 moments.
It's iconic because that had never happened before.
Right.
And like that Coconut Challenge is talked about by mega fans to this day because you can't show your pecking order because if you do, you're going to get John Carroll. It happens.
When I was sitting there, because they took me out so early, and I was mostly mad at Tammy and the general because they didn't see it. And I was sitting there and I was just glum. If you look at the you'll see the look of my, it's not because I got chopped out. It was like, oh my God, you guys, don't do what you're doing. Like, go after each other. And they didn't. Our 2 biggest mistakes, I would say, overall is not recognizing that. And then the episode before, or actually, no, the one before that, because I went out.
You went out first juror, so Rob was one before you.
So it would have been the one just before that, and I think it might have been when Gina went out.
Yes,
is that I begged Tammy to throw the challenge so we could get rid of Rob. Begged her.
Yeah, you guys should have done that.
She just would not do it because she's like, good sport, but she didn't realize, in the game of Survivor, those aren't the rules. And I even said, lay down and make him drag you around that maze. Like, just, I don't care, lay on the ground. And if he has to drag you through there, like, just, we have to get rid of him. He is too dangerous. And he was. And just that fighting that he and I did was fatal to both of us.
Yeah. John, really quick, speaking of Tammy, I wanted to ask you a question about her. Yep. So to me personally, I think Tammy is a very underrated great player, in my opinion. I think Tammy is like 5 years before she went on the show. She was like, what, late 20s, early 30s?
Yeah, she was, I think, like 28, 29.
She, to me, I think 5 years before would have been like a Parvati. I feel like she was like, because she was like a more mature, like Parvati version. She reminded me of like the early day of that. Like, she really was a strong woman. She was intelligent at the game. She knew how to work hard. Like, she, to me, I think could potentially be someone, if who came back today, could win the game.
Yeah, I don't know if I would see her so much as Parvati, but I see her as playing a little bit more like Sarah did when Sarah came back and won her season.
Yes.
And because no matter what, Tammy would use, and I would say like a cross between Sarah and Kim.
Yes, Kim Spraidland. Yeah.
Use her athleticism, because she's a beast. I mean, she's a true like natural athlete, and she would always have that. So no matter what season, unless there was some quirky weird thing to happen, she would always go deep because they were always going to need that body and that athleticism, because she could do it all. I mean, she was strong, eye-hand coordination, all of that kind of stuff. And she was a competitor. So she'd always have that calling card. And I think, but because her career in journalism took her in a completely different trajectory, that it was almost impossible for her to jump off of that kind of trajectory. But now that she is kind of taking a break from journalism and kind of relooking her life, and maybe this ship has sailed, but if there's the obvious people like Sean that people want to see, but like you're saying, like the ones that are underrated, Gabriel would be underrated. Gabriel was a 25-year-old young man who was still trying to he's an emergency, department physician. I mean, he's a doctor now. He's living in New Zealand with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 kids, but he's another one that has, I think what a great storyline he would have, because he would have the social game. If somebody got hurt, he would be there right in the mix to be able to kind of help people. But he's just this affable, kind, nice, funny person. I would love to see a 40-something Gabe play again. But same thing with Tammy. Tammy would be another one that would be just a secret weapon, because of just, like you said, kind of before her time, and had things worked out. I just feel like and then you put her in a final tribal council, being a journalist who interviews people, who investigates people, who was in a prison in Arizona, the first journalist to ever spend the night in Sheriff Arpaio's, jail system. I mean, she has done some incredible things. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, put her back on the island. I'm like, she's like a one-woman wrecking crew. She could get to the merge. I mean, she would be the one to watch.
John, you're the one that we want back.
We want you back.
You need to go back. Like, hello, you need to go back. People know who you are. Like big time. People think John Carroll got blindsided in the road to, like, you need a second chance. Like, no question.
You know,
you on that ballot.
Nalia and I kind of did a little campaign. It was called Bring Back John and Nalia, or Nelia and John, whatever it was. I don't know. I mean, it's, my partner and I, we have a goat farm. We're doing honeybees. We have farmers markets, and I've got my law firm. The pandemic has been really difficult on the legal field, just like everybody's professions have really taken a hit. But in the legal world, the courthouse is essentially closed for a year. And so whether you're criminal or civil, everything has gotten backed up. And if you can't get cases resolved and you can't get money in the door, you can't stay alive. And so it's been really, really tough. So, this next year is going to be digging out of a hole. But, if they ever did a ballot and they came calling, I mean, if the circumstances were right and I had the right safety net underneath me, I would consider it. But, it would be, it's tough. The game is a different game now. Social media makes it different.
True, cancel culture. You can't say the same things exactly. Now that you did then.
It was bad enough when I was on, when we had just had the listservs that people would participate in, and the hate mail I would get, and just the nasty vitriol that would be thrown my way because I was out. And then once I voted Gabe out, then it was all bets were off. I became the villain, and the gay villain on top of it that voted poor Gabe out, and then it was like all bets were off after that. I mean, everybody was just waiting for me to, get kicked out, and I think that's another reason why it was like such a big thing. It was more than just a power alliance. The power alliance was ran by a gay guy 20 years ago. And
incredible though, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's great stuff. But I don't know that I've seen a season since that had a dominant LGBT player in the first half, like our season was, that was really the leader of their tribe and was helping that tribe navigate its way through. Obviously, it's a team game that was there, but there's no doubt what my role was in the tribe. Not that somebody else couldn't have stepped up and have done it, but I was in that role.
And I'd like to get into that. So back into the actual show itself, you're on the island. What do you credit? How do you credit the functionality of Row 2? Did you know going into the first immunity challenge that you would be so strong?
That's a good question. I don't know that we knew at the time that we would be so strong. So what happened for the first challenge, and I don't know if they still do this, but when we played, every challenge, one person from the tribe could go scout the challenge.
Oh, really?
So for the very first few challenges, I scouted the challenge. And then as we got further into the game, other people, did it as well. And so when I got to scout the challenge, I realized, how it was going to work, and then sized up our team to figure out where our strengths and weaknesses were. So when we did it, we put our weakest swimmers and our weakest, just strength-wise, in the middle of the raft, and put the strength on the outside of the raft. So that way, it was really more like they would just be kind of helping, but they wouldn't be powering one direction and powering the other direction. So that was part of the reason that we laid out everybody that was there. There was another thing that when we had to build our raft, so there were 3 challenges in particular that I definitely took lead on, and it was a difference maker. One was the first challenge. The one is where we had to build our raft. I told everybody initially to stay on your knees because your core is where your power will come from. And so we didn't sit on our butts. We were up on our knees initially, and then your knees get sore. But we looked at it and said, how can we do this challenge the best we can? And then the other one is when we were doing the rocks in the boat.
Yes, the boat rock challenge.
Yeah,
where you had
that
to
was
turn
my
it
favorite
over.
challenge ever. That we did, because as we were going down, half our team couldn't even get to the boat, more than half. So it ended up being Gabe, myself, and Zoe. So Gabe went down and he was throwing all the rocks, but we still had all those rocks that were in there. And I realized if all three, and they edited it to make me, Gabe, like I was like an idiot, it kind of pissed me off because I'm like, that's not what that was. It was, I figured out we need to do this as a team, not do this individually and just keep taking rocks down. Because once we get enough down there, and so I got them together and I said, we need to go down together. There's enough rocks out. I think we can tip the boat over. And so sure enough, we go down together. And there was like a moment I was running out of breath and my lungs were burning. And it was like right on the edge. And then you felt the boat tip. And it was the most exhilarating feeling ever when we actually tipped that thing over and all the rocks fell out. And then the boat came up to the top. That was one of my all-time favorite moments when we played the game. So just trying to think of not just using brute strength, but just find ways to work your way through a problem. And I'm an ADD kid. So one of my things is I don't like A, B, C, D, E, F, G steps. I want to figure out how to get from A to Z as efficiently as possible, but without like undermining or diminishing, the outcome. So as my partner says, your brain, John, just works so much faster than mine, meaning his, when you go through stuff. So sometimes you have to slow down because I'm not catching up with you where you are trying to describe what it is we're doing. So that was one of those examples of just going down and realizing, wait a minute, we can circumvent this whole thing. Let's just do it together.
Yeah.
Tip it, not pull them out one at a time.
Yeah, no,
For
absolutely.
Sure. We definitely want to ask John about the Fafru challenge,
oh my God.
the gross food eating challenge.
Possibly my favorite Survivor moment of all time is watching Boston Rob cry and puke during that challenge. I mean, like double chef's kiss, incredible. Talk us through that challenge.
So, you could smell it before you could see it. Oh. And you could hear the flies before you could see the challenge. And we knew because of prior seasons that there was icky food challenge. Mm-hmm. And so we knew that there was a strong possibility. As a matter of fact, we just assumed there would be. We just didn't know what this country's delicacy would be that would be gross to us. And so we could smell the dead fish smell before we got to the challenge site. And then you could hear all of the flies.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a horror movie.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we could even just from watching. So many. It's
awful. And so I have a really sensitive nose. I have a nose that's like a dog. I can smell things like from far away and all that. And so when I smelled it, I knew I was in trouble, like right when I smelled it, because I was like, I feel like I'm gonna puke already because it smells rancid. It smells dead. And I just tell people, if someone says, well, what did it smell like? I'm like, well, it basically smelled like dead fish and shit together. And then when you actually got to see it, it had this sheen on it of the sliminess thing that you could just tell that it was slimy. And it had kind of this greenish gray hue over it. And then when they explained how they made it, that they take either a goat's bladder or a goat's stomach, and they take tuna, sashimi, and stick it in there, and they put, I don't know what they put, salt water or something else. They tie it up, and then they let it sit in the ocean for like 3 days.
Oh,
and then they pull it out. And for the culture, it's a delicacy. They grew up with the taste and acquired the taste. Obviously we have not done that.
Yeah.
So I remember when we were there, I kept my back to the other tribe as much as possible because I was very worried that I was just going to puke before I even got to the station.
Oh, wow.
Especially when we had to pick one person. I felt like I was green. And I kept turning away so they couldn't see me. And then of course they just thought Nalia, being the youngest and the smallest, girl, the woman, they just thought they would pick on her. And it was brilliant. It was like David versus Goliath. I mean, it was awesome to witness and watch. And I mean, she was struggling. First of all, it was 3 pieces, and
that was a lot. That was a whole bowl.
That was a lot.
And she's tiny,
Yeah.
I mean, So watching that all unfold and then watching him retch and then have to pick it back up. So awful. Oh my God, it was awful.
Yeah. Not fun.
So rewarding based on our knowledge now of Boston Rob.
We have a few questions about him.
We'll get there. So also very significantly, can you tell us a little bit about the sea urchin? I mean, of course, I'm sure you get asked all the time, the infamous sea urchin injury with Kathy coming to your rescue. Walk us through what that was like, because from my understanding, when I saw that, I did not think you were supposed to pee on a sea urchin injury. But talk us through what that was like for you.
Yeah, so that was not a good day at the office.
No,
because so I first get hit with the sea urchin, and then I get hit with the crab under the rock and split my finger from my fingernail on the outside all the way around to the pad. I still have the scar that you can see on my finger where it got me and split my nail on top in half, opened it up, and then got me all the way around about down to there on my finger.
Wow.
I could see the fat inside my finger. Like I could see the fat globules.
So that bit you good.
Yeah, it got me all the way through. And so with the sea urchin, we had the sea urchins, and when you crack them open, they have the roe. And it's so good. Like, I don't know if you've had it when you've had sushi, but it's amazing and very sweet and really, really tasty. So we knew there was a little colony of these big sea urchins that were out there. So I had made a little spear thing and had my little burlap bag and got my snorkel stuff and went out there. So they came to film me doing it. Well, the waves were pretty good that day. So what happened is the boat was a wave got the boat and it was coming to me with the camera people in it. And so what happened is I took my hand to push the boat away, but I needed some resistance on the other side. And I looked down and I could see rocks. So I saw a rock and then I looked away. And then the wave took me away from where my hand was supposed to go. And I put it right on top of a sea urchin. So I had one spine that went actually through my hand on the other side. And the others actually, some of them went underneath my fingernails and broke off. I had others that were like through my finger and out the other side. And they were and then they were all broken. And so that venom and the spines is what gets released. So when your hand's in the water, you actually feel okay because the saline and all that is fine. As soon as it hits the air and you come out of there, it was like, and that's why I was actually kind of holding like a tourniquet, was trying to keep the blood from going into my hand, because with every pulse of blood, it was like fire, like just burning, searing, stinging, like pain. So when I squeezed it, probably because also the nerves are in there, it made it feel better. So I was like strangulating my wrist to try to like cut off the sensation from how my hand felt. And so then when I came out of the water, that's when I was like, okay, as I was swimming in, I was like, okay, I'm gonna need somebody to pee on my hand, because I had spines everywhere, like broke off in my fingers. And so I came out and was yelling, I need somebody to pee on my hand. I'm holding my hand. So I think they kind of figure out what it was. And so Pascal tried to come up, and he was pee shy. And
Dad, of course Pascal, right?
What's that?
Of course it was Pascal's the one that tries first.
So the little Republican judge comes up, drops out, and we're like, I'm waiting. And nothing was coming out of the spigot. And then I was like, does anybody else have to pee? Because I was like hurting. And then that's when you saw Kathy like jumping over logs and boulders.
She's like, help is on the way. She's like Miss Doubtfire.
Fire music happening all at the same time. And, I'll do it. And then and you're not even thinking about the cameras. You're just like, but it did feel better. I mean, but it happened really quick. And so I joked about that in the reunion, was like within a couple seconds, I was like, I didn't really feel any more pain, but she was still had to go. And I'm like, I don't know what the etiquette is here. If I just like pull my hand out and like stand up. So I said something like, yeah, I guess you had to go. And so I just stayed down there with her until she was like done. And so, and then he got up and it was like, thank you.
That is incredible. I mean, because it was such a moment too, where you're squatting, she's squatting,
Right.
you're like, your hand is just like disappeared inside of Kathy.
Yeah.
I mean,
John, I will say the one thing I love about Kathy is the first boot that made it far. Like, she was supposed to go first episode. She had that edit that she was going to be the Deb or the Diane. So, you know, she was that person. But she made it to like the end. And it's incredible. I love Kathy. She's great.
Oh yeah. I tell everybody, had she got to the final two, she would have won probably nearly unanimously had she made it all the way through.
They loved her.
Yeah. I mean, it was just mad respect at that point that she was able to be that low on the totem pole. Without a doubt, the swap saved her. I mean, that's, there's no doubt about that piece of it. Because I don't know that she would have held enough sway if she had remained. Because even with Pascal and Nalia, you know, I mean, she was struggling, even trying to like, you know, work with them. But you know, that little barbecue that she and Boston Rob had, that was another huge moment. And you know, when they said you had to select somebody, everybody was just worried. Like, nobody wanted to, like, you know, leave and let Boston Rob do whatever he was going to do. So that's why I didn't go, because I was like, well, you know, I'm worried about what damage he's going to do if I leave, because I knew I was always had a a bounty on my head, you know, from just being in that leadership role. So I was trying to control as much as possible in a game that you can't control.
Yeah, and speaking of Boston Rob, we're going to get to you being on a tribe with him. So next, episode 1 through 3, y'all are the love tribe, never having to go to tribal. Episode 4, you guys get the swap. Now, I know you guys filmed right after Africa, so I don't know if you guys even saw there was a swap. Did you see a swap coming at this point in time? And then once it happened, what was your reaction to it? And what was your initial opinion of like Boston Rob, Sean, and V?
No, I didn't see a swap coming. And then of course, when it did hit, it was like, oh gosh, you know, how is this going to end up going? But, you know, realistically, it really worked out for Rotu. You know, Rotu was in power in the one, and Rotu was in power in the other. You know, but that also created the vulnerability that Gabriel ended up having, because Pascal and Nalia were separated, and he definitely had more of a kinship with them personality wise. In terms of how he was approaching the game, I think he would play it completely different now. But he was definitely bonded with them on a human level, and so you know, that was a huge, you know, literally it was a game changer, and that's why they do it.
There you go. So let's get into Boston Rob. So Boston Rob had a few comments that we did not appreciate as LGBT.
Right.
Exact thing he said was he referred to you as a big time queer.
Right.
He basically outed you on national television. What were your thoughts at the time? And has Boston Rob ever taken accountability for the shit that came out of his mouth in this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has. I can tell you certainly when he outed me, it was kind of a desperation thing at that point in time, because I think he saw that, like, when Gabriel was unwilling to flip and stuck with us, or was unwilling to flip against me when he was going home, because Boston Rob and them told him, you know, they were trying to like do it. And I don't know if he just didn't believe it was going to happen or what, but you know, he just ran out of options. I mean, he definitely was able to get to Kathy and, you know, put a lot of doubt in, but Kathy already had that because she was, you know, the low person, you know, on the alliance side of things. But then when that moment came, it was really almost like offhanded, like a last minute, like, oh, should I? But okay, you know, I'll do it. That was where he was overtly just asked me if I was gay, you know, and you know, that was in 2001. And so there was a very different reaction across the board about that moment, because you fast forward, 17 years later, 16 years later, and Zeke gets outed, and it was a completely different reaction, vastly different, time. But going back then, Boston Rob, Boston Rob and I talked, and he did apologize before the show aired, and so I don't have any animosity towards Boston Rob about that moment. I mean, I lived in California, I was out there, but back home in Nebraska, I was not out to everybody. So, like my nieces and nephews found out, that's how they found out, was that it occurred. And then I did tell my family that, what had happened, and that I do get outed when I'm on the show. So there were neighbors that didn't know. And so my parents talked with them just to give them heads up so they didn't learn it from a TV show. So, I mean, it definitely created, a hardship because it was my story to tell. And without a doubt, they asked me if I was going to be out on the show. And I said, to be honest, no. I said, but I will use that personal information about myself potentially strategically, which I did. I did tell Tammy, and that built trust because Tammy never said a word to anybody. So that's why I knew I could trust Tammy, is because I did tell her. And that's why I believed in her so much while we played the game. And it was our hope that we would go up against each other, because I think it would have been an incredible final two, as articulate and powerful as she is, and especially athletically, because I'm sure she would have gotten a whole bunch of challenges had she been able to go. Look what she did on the stilts, for God's sake. So, but yeah, it was still hard, at the time, but it was actually more difficult down the road, because as we have worked our way through Me Too, and all of a sudden this spotlight, on just our racism problem. It's always been a problem, but really confronting white privilege and male privilege. And it really stirred up a lot of things for me personally, because, Boston Rob, said the things that he did, and he built his actual legacy on that first season of meanness, really nasty, not good stuff. I mean, it wasn't built on a strategy. He just said shitty things to the camera, and everybody like, ha, ha, ha. And played 6 times, off of that resume. And then somebody like myself has played once. And it's not like I didn't give any less than all when I played the game. I have my own, legacy within the game and the space I occupy as an LGBT player, the way that our tribe ran, my ouster, I mean, you would think if there was ever going to be like a second place or a second chance story, mine would be one of them. That game was supposed to be mine. I mean, people, when I got voted out, producers were like, we really thought you were going to run away with this, like you were going to win. And the way that they turned on me. So even just that little part of the story of like, could I come back and do it, or would I just, go out early or go down in flames again? You don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I happen to think you would do well. But I think one of the decisions that may have had an impact on your game was, of course, choosing to vote Gabe out. Can you talk to us about, because I understand, like you said earlier, he was part of your tight 5. And then when you are asking him for sort of confirmation, affirmation that he is with you, he was sort of floundering. What was your experience with that whole situation?
I overplayed my hand, and I can pretty much look back at, I've always known at the moment when it was going down, and it was 100% fear-based. So I had left college or law school to go play the game, and he was supposed to be like in our tight 5, but really in my tight 3. And so I was building my game around his game and Tammy's game.
Yeah.
Zoe and the general kind of as our extras, if you will. And And I could see that when Pascal and Nalia left, like he was struggling of whether or not he really wanted to play the game that we wanted to play, and what he wanted. Really, he just wanted to be with the two of them. That was my belief at the time. And so I started kind of calculating what the next moves. You're always trying to play a couple moves down the road. And I saw a road where I would go out pre-merge. And that was a $10,000, loss of money, because as soon as you make the merge, the money jumps up. And I knew I needed that money when I come back to school. And so I started calculating like, oh my gosh, if he's really doing this and I don't take the first strike, he could outmaneuver me and I could end up going down, early. And so there was a sense of panic that we were losing him. So it was, hey, are we good? And then rather than just recognizing that we just didn't get the answer that we needed. And so for me, it was like, I can't trust you in this game if you're waffling. Like we're going to try to make really big moves here as a group. And I feel like you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And, I'd rather know the devil I'm dealing with, like Rob and Sean, versus devil I don't, which was at that moment was Gabriel. Cause I don't know, like, are you actually a great actor and you're playing this kind of, I want to build a community and that's all a ruse and that you're going to strike when the time comes. Plus I saw his athleticism, climbing the coconut trees and doing the things he was doing. So I knew he was going to be a late challenge beast. And my hope would to go up against Tammy. And I knew that if he could run the table socially and run the table athletically, I would have a really hard time against him at the end.
Yeah,
true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially at merge. I mean, he could have, like, if he was, based on the editing, he seemed like kind of like a Greg Buis. Like, he didn't want to play the game. He was just there for love. And what you said in your confessional is like, literally how we saw him as. Like, we didn't see him as a strategic mastermind at all. But I feel like he kind of had it coming because of that. Like, I mean, that's very season 1 Borneo, is to play the game for fun and the relationships and the survival. But now we're at that time where you're playing, it's a game and you're playing for $1 million. You can't play that game for $1 million because that's not playing a game.
And I was itching to play from the jump. So that's where I kind of came out so hot and heavy. It's because I was just, I don't recommend any tribe wait 15 days to play the game. It was great to be safe for 15 days, but none of us won. None of the 8 won. We needed to be playing that game much sooner. We needed to jettison Kathy and get to playing the game so we could really figure out, like, okay, it was like almost 2 different seasons. Like the Road to World, of Kumbaya and the Love Tribe, and then you had Mata Amu that was just eating itself alive. Vastly different environments. And Vesepi was like the perfect player to navigate both worlds.
Underrated winner. Underrated winner. I think she played a great game, and I don't think she gets enough credit. It
holds up over time. It just isn't that bombastic, in your face, like stuff. And I think really what we're seeing now is like, hey, that kind of casting and thought process gave us Brandon Hance with a Confederate flag on his chest, playing the game. Like today, that person would never get a whiff if you saw that, at all. So there were a lot of decisions and things that were made that were really, I think, very telescopic, just not really looking at the bigger picture. And then both Big Brother and Survivor have had its comeuppance, pretty much at the same time, especially within the BIPOC community. But the LGBT community is not that far behind with the same grievances that we have. It just so happens that a large number, most of the people that have played in the LGBT community have been white. So, if you think that, so there's an imbalance even in that piece of it. So that demographic plug a hole and all that kind of stuff has kind of created the monster that they're now trying to unravel. And these next few seasons are going to be really interesting to see, like, how they're cast, you know.
Because now that what CBS promised, what now every show they have has to be at least half people of color, half
Right.
of a minority, and I love that. That's what it should have been the whole time.
Now, I have a question for you, John.
Yeah.
Do you think we will ever get, I mean, something that Josh and I talk about that we would love to see on a show like Survivor or Big Brother is a gay power couple. You know, we've never seen a gay couple.
The gay showmans, unless they were together from the beginning.
Right, because we had one of those.
Blood versus water.
Which I don't even really, they weren't even ever on the same tribe, were they?
No.
Yeah, they were at the merge together, but
yeah, like I think later, at that point, but not like, you know, as
also Colton's a monster.
Oh no, them and also San Juan del Sur, there was a engaged couple, and they made it right to the merge. And they were in for like an episode or two.
Yeah, they were already together when they were both dancers, and then they ended up breaking up a couple years.
Yeah,
you know, a few years after that. No, look, is it impossible? No. I mean, first of all, the fact that, you know, that couples do come out of it is always amazing to me, because we're disgusting people when we're out there. Like, there's nothing clean about any parts, like nothing, like everything is gross. So, but, you know, the bond that people have that they carry on after the show, I think the only reason that you haven't seen it is because really for most, if not all the seasons, it's been token casting.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got one, it hasn't been set up to like, because I know when I was helping provide, you know, potential people for the show, and would, you know, come across somebody and send it to casting, like Chris Hammonds, I found him, and I found for them, and so I helped them get on the show. And then I had probably 5 other people that made it to the finals that I had sent over to them over the years. And so I know that part of the dynamic was, you know, when they would look for somebody, you know, it was looking for a straight, white, under 28-year-old single boy, you know, guy. And same thing with the girl. And I'm sure it was, you know, not only, you know, are they looking for the physical attributes, but they were looking for the showmances that might arise. You never really saw them cast, you know, available LGBT people that might, you know, fall in love or
more than one
bond that leads to a relationship, you know, outside the show, because there just haven't been enough of us within the same potential demographic in terms of like age and those kinds of things to even have, you know, to give it a shot.
Yeah, and like I just like having more than one gay person on the show at a time, you know.
Especially like shows, I feel like Big Brother, they need that. They really need that on Big Brother.
Yeah. I think it would be great if they had like somebody who was actually out, like, you know, the LGB, you know, the LBG, I'm kind of like, I'm losing track of my letters, LGBT part, and then have somebody who's a Q, you know, and fall for any of the other letters that are coming before, you know. I mean, I think that would be a really cool storyline if there was somebody who really, that was deep into the closet, that was questioning, and, you know, and I think that as we've learned about gender and sexuality and attraction, and realize it's not binary, or, you know, for most people, that, you know, if they had enough people amongst the group, you might have a love story come out. That, you know, it could be amongst a trans person, it could be a non-binary person, it could be LGBT. I mean, you name it. I mean, I think it would be really cool to see that. But again, would they be brave enough? Because one of the things that really pissed me off in the past, and I would hear this, is I would hear through the grapevine that they considered Survivor a family show. Well, honey, we've been calling ourselves family for a long time. You're right. You're damn right. It's a family show.
Yeah. It's certainly a family show. I mean, because most of the people I know who watch it are gay men.
A lot of gays love
the show. Now, John, do you still do referrals? Because I've thought about putting in an audition for the new season.
You know, ever since the pandemic and with the BIPOC community, standing up for themselves and really doing important work and eliciting change, across the board. Look at, Big Brother Canada is doing it's season 9. It's
Arissa Cox is incredible.
Arissa has gone in there and just
Incredible.
she is changing some stuff up in here. So, it's good. And we need that same kind of change to occur, on Survivor. And so hopefully, when we see a season 41 cast or a season 42 cast, that it's not going to just be based on race or ethnicity, that, we open it to the sense of just other that's out there, whether it is race or ethnicity, sexuality, religion, not religion, a-religious. It's like, let's actually get people that are diverse.
Yeah.
And let's not focus on trying to create showmances and, TNA type stuff. Like actually
and influencers.
Right. Like, and people that are being recruited, and so I've heard through the grapevine that, and even as they were heading into season 40, that, that kind of casting is not happening, that they will not interview, at least is what I've heard, people who are not students of the game, who are not part of the Survivor community, that they have to come in with the receipts and be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. So hopefully in season 41, we're actually going to see, regular folk, not, with, 500,000 followers on Instagram and, trying to get a modeling gig or whatever it is. So we'll see.
That's awesome.
Let's hope so. So now we get into the merge, though. Very exciting. Did you know? So I think one of the standouts right away was Kathy. Kathy was our merge standout of sort of being paranoid, ready to jump ship. Rob famously had the conversation that you were trying to get Kathy out. Was there any truth to that?
That we were trying to get her out?
Yeah. Where did Rob just pull that out of his ass, or?
Oh, no, she was always on the chopping block. Always.
So she would have been the merge boot? That was the true thing?
If we hadn't got others out, but in our group, she was always going to be first out.
Yeah.
Like always. Like she was never out of the chopping block, like ever. For maybe some others, but not with the core alliance, that because it was just so draining, just the paranoia, and it was just very triggery, just like everything was hair on fire. And it was like, are you even having fun?
Yeah.
When she made the kite and won the kite thing because of the time with her dad, she definitely was having fun there. She was like a little girl and happy and just sweet. And Kathy's awesome. She is really an awesome person, and she's got a big heart, and she's just a cool person. But in the game, just the way that we had started, and I think we were all in shock that there was no food, like that we were not getting any food, like no rice, no nothing. And then with the fire and the water and all of that, and just the necessities of what you need and the heat and everything, that mama bear, came out, and she just saw a lot of people wanting to goof off. And it really wasn't like that. We were hard workers. She just didn't feel like we were prioritizing what she wanted us to prioritize. And maybe it's because she saw her own vulnerability of being older. But by the time she got to the merge, she became a very dangerous player, like very, very dangerous player. And when I did not win that first challenge, because I had put my shirt down on the raft, I thought I was allowed to pick up my shirt because it wasn't touching the raft. And because I had it out there in case I was going to get sunburned. And I went to pick it up, and they said that I touched the ground. And I was actually trying to pick up my shirt to put it over my back, because I think it was her and I were the final two.
It was.
And that was another big game changer for me, is when I did not win that challenge against her, because I put my hand down to pick up my shirt. And that was just one of those, you're hungry, you're not working on all faculties. And I lost focus for 1 second, and not winning that, kind of changed things as well, because, you never know what direction that might have gone at that time. Because it might have been Kathy at that point in time if we felt like she was going to be a troublemaker, because we could have saved the other ones for later because we just had the numbers.
Yeah, you did.
I don't think Boston Rob and Sean together without Kathy would have been able to get past Glenn Malia. I don't think so.
Yeah. So you never know. You just never know what was going to happen at that time. But I didn't really see our foursome really, if we were in command, I just didn't see Zoe or the general ever needing to make some other move until maybe we got to 5. And then they would start to get worried about where they fit into that scenario. And there was going to have to be some double talk that was going to have to be done to assuage their worries, but we weren't there yet. So we didn't really have to, we were able to keep them as part of the team.
Yeah.
Do you think like Boston Rob opening his mouth to Kathy, like, and making her go crazy that round, is that what did him in? Like, what was it like? Was it an easy decision? We're all just voting Boston Rob out.
Because he came for you. He came for you in a big way.
Oh yeah, and the whole stupid written on my forehead. And,
yeah.
it was like we were like junkyard dogs for years and years and years. MTV would have best reality fights, and it was me, Sean, and Rob for like a decade. Just always in these fights and different scenes of like, us fighting with each other because, we were, it was too bad because there was one point in time where, Boss Rob and I had talked. I thought, if we could have just not been junkyard dogs and just teamed up, like, and even all these years later, the Alphas still cannot look at Dominic,
Dominic and Chris
Noble, could not. And ultimately it was fatal. Like it will burn itself out unless you can find a way to work as a team of adversaries. And I haven't really ever seen a season that they can really, truly, do that. The Alphas always seem to just go after each other and then they go home.
Yeah, very true.
They burn themselves out and everybody just kind of just waits it out. And then something happens. And, the only season really that I can think of is when Rob, took command of his tribe and had them all grouped together and, controlled them with like psychological warfare.
Redemption Rob's Cult Island is what we call it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Literally, these people were literally in the Rob cult and, and he just like was the mafia don. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought that he was his number 2 and just controlled it, from the get-go. It was amazing to watch. Infuriating, but amazing to watch.
And it was fun with it not happening well for him on Winners at War. He tried to do it again. Now we're like, we know what you're up to. Goodbye.
Yeah, 2.0 is not going to work.
So, John, we talked about the legendary Coconut Challenge and how you saw it going off the rails from the sidelines. Was it just that, or was it anything else that you think convinced Nalia and Pascal to ultimately turn on their original Row 2 friends? What happened there?
Yeah, no, I can tell you what happened. Is number one is we were not wary and didn't realize there was always going to be a game within the game, and so there was a game within the challenge, and it was designed, for a power alliance to, not be self-aware and reveal their plans, and it was brilliantly crafted and brilliantly executed. Because it worked exactly what they needed to be. Because they were on the verge of a big old pagong again, and that's just season 4. It's like really, people would be like, "Oh, is this just the way it works?" Like the one Power Tribe comes in, they needed my ouster to happen. I really strongly believe that. So what happened is we get back to the beach and they pull me out to go do an interview, and it wasn't until in 2020. That I actually had an epiphany as to why it happened. I was pulled so far away from where the tribe was located that I saw the ropes of the boundary area. Like I could see their tents. And I had never seen that during my 24 days that I was in the game. I was that far away doing my interview. And I realized later, and I was gone for a long time. And of course, I'm a jabberjaw, so I didn't realize also that it was only when I was there long enough that I started getting worried. I've been away from in a very momentous thing. So, but the interview lasted a very, very long time. I should have just cut it and said, I'm done. I got to go back to the tribe. So by the time I got back, everything had already taken place.
Yeah.
I walked in and I knew I was done. I knew it as soon as I saw Nalia's face sitting in the tent with the group, and I could see the sadness on her and Pascal, but I knew I was done. So that's when I went to Tammy and Zoe and essentially tried to have a conversation with Nalia. She just very surface, just wasn't going to have it. And then went and said, it's me. They've joined up. Our worst nightmare, the 3 and the 2. That's why for years my signature line on my email was, on Survivor, I learned that 5 is more than 4. And so when the 3 and the 2 got together, I knew I was in trouble, and I was so pissed because I was like gone for so long. There was no room for me to try to do anything. I mean, it was just, I had no idol then. So there was nothing I could pull out of my pocket to save myself.
If only you did, though. But who would have you idled out?
Like if I would have had it, I would have been able to save myself, but didn't. So that's why Zoe threw her vote. Is I told her, I said, just try to save yourself, and because I'm going. There's nothing I can do about it, and there was no inroad for me at all. The 3 and the 2 knew that the best plan that they had just hatched would get them now because they were in a group of 3 and 2 until the 1 and the 3 was like worried where they were going to be. And it would have been Kathy. She would have been in the power spot to be able to flip wherever she wanted to go, which is ultimately, what ended up happening, down the road.
So, John, my question is, if it was today and there was a hidden immunity idol, because I bet your ass would have gotten it, there's no question in my mind, who would have you idled out at that final 9 tribal?
So say it again one more time.
Who would have you idled out of those 5 people?
Yeah.
Who would have you wanted to take out?
Trying to think back then what our give me one second here.
Sean, I think you guys.
Yeah, it would have been between Sean and Kathy.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think it still would have been Kathy, because I think we were more worried about her strategy, like the fact that she could just do so much more damage, and I feel like that where the game had been, that Sean really wasn't getting a lot of inroads with Pascal and Nalia at that time, but I felt like it was Kathy was really kind of the vocal ringleader. And it would have made a lot of sense to take her out and then leave them as 2, and then to see if there was something we could do there.
Kathy's probably sitting there saying, "Why y'all so obsessed with this?"
Yeah. Kathy was,
amazing,
a handful and awesome.
Incredible.
What a great character.
I love Kathy.
She was, just fantastic. Just star player without a doubt.
Yeah. So then we get to after an unfortunate incident, which we won't go into too much detail about. You took a vacation to the jury house, and that's something that we don't hear about all that often. Can you tell us? Okay, so you're voted off. What happens then? What was like the waiting like for you?
Ponderosa.
Yeah. So, really, we still called it Ponderosa, but it wasn't like Ponderosa now where it actually gets filmed and all of that. So, what's really crazy, and it's one of those things where you just never forget it, because when you go and the game starts, you are in this alternate universe. Like the rest of the world literally just stops existing for you, and you are just in this game. Mm-hmm. And you're consumed by it. Like everything, every waking moment is strategy and paranoia and hunger and exhaustion and just psychological, emotional warfare. And then all of a sudden you get voted out. And then, as tribal council is going, you really have this dawning of like, oh my God, this ride is about to end. And then they take, snuff your torch, and then they always have that little walk. And then what happens as you walk, you are literally transitioning from this game world into, it's like leaving like the set of King Kong and going back into where production and the crew is on the other side. And you walk through all these trees and palm trees, and then there's essentially a psychologist there, and there's producers that are there, and And they basically kind of sweep you up and take you to your little house that you're going to go in. And, there's a lot of checking in on you emotionally. Main part is food. Like you want food, and then you're just eating and what do you want to eat? And so, and you're just babbling, just about your demise, your time, whatever. You're just all over the place. And really kind of shell shocked. And then you stay the night in that safe house, and then you go back to the tent city. And so for me, I was by myself plus one production assistant. And so you just sit there and you stew and you replay and you start thinking about your final tribal council. And oh my God, I wrote some hellfire, Sue Hawk stuff was going to look like child's play. Tammy wrote some hellfire stuff when she got voted out. And I was especially Nalia and Pascal, I was going to come right at them, with their religious stuff and, I was coming hot and heavy for that. But then you work your way through it and you tear up a lot of speeches and all that stuff as you work through it. And then as people are being taken out of the game, you start getting more information and all of that. And so, but then you get this whole wonderful friendship that happens in Ponderosa. Once people get over the shock of losing, and then you just get to hang out. It was some of the best times I ever had in my life. And that last night when we were on the yacht before Final Tribal Council, and just under the stars and just hanging out and laughing and really getting to know each other at that point because the game is over. And then especially when the final, the final two ended up coming back and Pascal got real sick and he was, they were giving him IVs and stuff. And
Pascal passed out before
so
he went down.
We were in line getting ready to go to Tribal Council and I think he was in front of me and he was kind of holding onto a branch and essentially had passed out, but his wrist got caught in the crux of a tree and it was kind of holding him up. And as he was going down, so we got him down and then I started kicking into first aid and we got him down the ground, got his legs up, to help circulation go back to his heart and brain. And, and then we were calling and it took a couple minutes for the medics to come. And so we were, essentially doing first aid the best we could. I was taking his pulse and trying to make sure that, I wasn't dealing with a cardiac issue and that he just didn't just pass out from dehydration, weakness or whatever. And to this day, I'm the only person that's ever been in the jury that's actually spoken to the players outside of Final Tribal Council.
Yeah.
So, and so when he got voted out, I think for a day or two, he was not with us because he was so sick and they were giving him IVs and giving him medical care. And then when he got strong enough, then he could join us. But he was always weak for the rest of our time there. He was, and to be honest, the best thing that happened was that purple rock because
I was about to ask about it.
He never would have survived to the end of the game.
So what was your thought on that first prod ever? That's history being made right there.
Yeah. You could see it, why they were going to do it. And it was wow, y'all are literally played this whole game and you've reduced it to a rock in a bag. Mm-hmm. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing to watch.
Fun. I love watching Purple Rocks. It's great when people get rocked out. It's a blast.
Yeah.
I would never go to a Purple Rock ever, but hey.
Right. I mean, it's whew, go that long and now you're just going to roll the dice. I'm what?
Insane.
So funny.
So just now I'd love to chat a little bit about some of the stuff you experienced post show. First of all, did you watching the show, did you see anyone and you thought their edit was really different than reality? Anyone who you were just you watched them on the show and you said, that is not who they are, for better or for worse?
Spill the tea, John Carroll.
No, to be honest, the only thing I can say about editing is that it's edited for maximum effect, but ultimately you do say the things that you say. And what I learned about the way that, especially I think Americans in particular talk, we have this Minnesota nice kind of vibe where, it's we sound nice when we want to say things, but buried in the middle of some of the things we say is really how we feel. So my example, I tell people, be prepared if you're going to go on any reality show, is you could say, hey, so-and-so, most of the time, really a great person, but today he's a dick. I'm just going to cut out for the most part, he's just a really nice guy. And all they're going to edit is, today he's a dick. Yeah. And they're going to snip out. Now, reality, what did I just say? I just said the guy's a dick.
Yeah.
I couched it by adding some softer language before or after it. But really what I said was the guy's a dick. So ultimately, that's why when I hear people say, oh, it's just, I didn't get the edit. No, you got the edit that you gave them because they edit you to maximum effect. And so other than, potentially playing it up for the cameras, because I can definitely tell you, especially, when season 4, when this is very new, we all knew that we were there to give them a good show. I mean, we knew that part of it. That just becomes part of like the DNA of what you're doing, because you want to give people a good show. You know that there's been 3 seasons before you, and you don't want to be a boring show. And of course, now there's been so many seasons, that they do the rankings and all that stuff. Nobody wants to be season 40.
No, nobody wants to be 40. Thailand. At least you were Thailand.
Right.
I mean,
and so you do have these seasons that Thailand, Guatemala gets bagged on. I mean, so you get these seasons that are out there that people, kind of trash. And so I can't really say that people got a bad edit. They got the edit that they gave them. And probably deserved.
I wish Zoe would have had more of an edit, though. We didn't get much of Zoe.
Because you didn't give them much.
Well, okay, there we go. Well, Zoe's not having another chance then.
So there's that story.
She just didn't. I mean, she was pretty. Sorry.
John, this might be one of your clips that I take from this to promote this episode.
I mean, there's just, like, who was it? Was it like Purple Kelly? Was she one of the other ones that was like hard to edit?
Never edited.
Yeah. There's just, some people that like, they might interview well and cast well, and then get out there, and then the game, like, takes, and then some other part of their personality shows up. Like, damn well, like, you tell people, when you go on, I tell people, if you're going to go on the show for the first 3 days, get along with everybody, build stuff, and carry around a lot of sticks, and don't get in a fight. Just keep your mouth shut, work hard, smile, and be a nice person. Please, hello, thank you, goodbye. And you will get to past the first episode. But somebody always offers themselves up. And almost every single season, somebody just does something that's polarizing. Everybody goes, oh, it's you. Like, whew, that's over with now. So now we can just all relax, because we all know. And that's what Kathy was. If we had lost, by that first night, she was sleeping by herself.
Poor Kathy.
Like, I mean, literally, if any other season other than ours, and being part of a uber successful tribe, her butt's going home every season.
Yeah.
Nearly every season.
Yeah.
But the quirks of the Rotu tribe and the Love tribe and our success, she was protected until she actually emerged as her own player.
John, did you see the season do you know who Reem is?
Oh yeah.
Totally a Kathy reincarnation. They're the same person. It's like a new Kathy, and she was first.
Reem is more Kathy, when on our season, was unhinged.
Yeah.
And Reem is not unhinged.
Like, she was incredible though.
She's aggressive.
Iconic.
Like, I mean, she's vocal, she's aggressive, but I didn't take her as like a hysterical person. And I hate using that word because I think it's just this way to describe a woman, but maybe unhinged is a little better. But Kathy, can you a little bit?
I love Kathy.
If you said hot mess, Kathy was the hot mess of Survivor, and Sarah was the second place hot mess on Survivor Marquesas.
Are you so sad you never got to be on a tribe with Sarah?
I love Sarah. We stay in touch through social media, and she is just the most adorable human being and just the sweetest, nicest person. And her Instagram is a lot of fun to follow. If you're not following her,
shout out to Sarah. I
yeah.
am a
we love
huge
her.
Sarah fan.
Yeah.
Huge.
She didn't do anything, and I loved it.
Yeah.
If Sarah wants to come on Couch Potato Queens, girl, let us know.
Hey, no, I'll hook you up. She'll be up. She'll be up. Yeah.
We would love to have her.
She's a legend.
Yeah, she's just going through she's had some things she's had to deal with, and she's open about it on her Instagram. So, but I think when she's, got time and she's up for it, I think she would love to, because she's had a very rich life, and she's had her fair share of struggles, especially on the health front that she's been dealing with.
I'm telling you, John, Sarah is a type of player that could win the game depending on what season she's in. Yep. 2 seasons later, the Sarah of the game won, Jenna Maraska. Sarah was the start of her type, of her archetype. She was the first hot chick, the sexy girl with the big boobs.
Well, because we had Jerry as well. She was in line with sort of these early...
Jerry was the true villain, though.
Mm-hmm.
Which we love.
We love Jerry.
Jerry's awesome. Like true villain. Like Jerry was never not going to be the villain in her season, which made it so great when she got to come back and play and have another shot to show a different side of her, which was a lot of fun to be able to see. I think that's what's so cool about a lot of the people that are quality people that they cast have all of these really amazing facets. They're not just kind of a linear type personality where have single interests and all of that. It's, they're just out there people who love taking risks, don't mind change, reincarnating themselves. You'll see a lot of that amongst some of the survivors.
Yeah. Who from your season are you still close with?
Nalia is like my bestie from the season.
Oh.
The pandemic has been hard on everybody. So, trying to, we haven't been able to see anybody. We had a big Marquesas reunion. I think 13 or 14 of us were on a Zoom call.
Wow.
And it was awesome. Just had a blast. We stay there is communication amongst most of us with others. Like there's satellites of people that we're connected with, but it's like a Venn diagram. There's lots of overlap in our group. I think that Patricia, Mama, is the only one that I think, was when her time was done with Survivor, she was done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just must not have been, whether it was the edit or her experience or what happened, but she really closed that door and moved on.
John, I have a question. This is a T question. I'm trying to be like the Andy Cohen right now with this. Mm-hmm. Are there any gay survivors from early seasons that you know of that hooked up? I'm willing to ask it. I'll ask it.
I'll let them tell. I'll just say the answer is yes, but I'm not going to tell you more than that.
T.
Yeah. And with the cross-pollination with other CBS shows, yes, I know that's a fact. It isn't just our straight brethren that have hooked up. There have been plenty of the LGBTs that have participated in cross-pollinating activities with other CBS shows.
Love. Is there any hint that you can give? Any hint?
I will. The only hint that I will give you is I have 2 CBS notches on my belt.
Okay, well, folks.
One is a survivor, one's a racer.
Ooh, did you hook up with Riken?
I'm not telling you anything. I'm not telling you anything.
We're not hearing anything. So
I'm not here to spill all the tea. I'm just here to serve it up in a little cup, and you can have 2 drops of sugar.
I think what needs to happen is, if you get back on Survivor, that's the moment to start really spill it. But
well, I know that one of those notches has spilled the beans to other people because they have come and told me that they talked about it when they were on the island. Yes.
Wait. I need to figure
No,
out.
Josh,
You can go do the math later.
we'll do the math later. It's not your strong suit, Hanny. Okay, Judd, this has been such a pleasure. Is there anything else about your experience that you don't normally get to tell people about, or that it just was really stuck with you about the whole experience?
Well, I'll say three things. One, it changed my life completely, like this different direction. Never in a million years when I played the game in November of 2001, and then when it aired in February of 2002, did I think in 19 years I would be having a conversation about it. You know what I mean? Never in a million years did I ever think that it was going to have those kinds of legs, and be such a important show in pop culture, because here it is, 20 years old, and we are confronting some serious societal issues within the game itself, and the game is going to be better for it. There's going to be, I think, a reset that's there. So never in a million years would I have thought that was going to occur. So the second thing I would say is that the game, when it first started, was a social experiment, and it still remains that today. Do I think that there are times when production's influence has changed the game for the worse? Absolutely. But I think there's been important moments that production has also participated in that have been really, really good and helpful. Sometimes they've been late to seeing things that they need to see, yes, but there's been other times then they've been really right on it. And I think that the intention is to get it right. I don't believe that anybody that I've ever met in production, purposely wanted to ever hurt anybody or create an environment that would do harm. But it's also a show that creates drama, and they have to tell a story, and they have to create story arcs. And so you have to be mindful of that when you go out there, however you choose to play the game, and the things that you choose to say and do, you're going to have to live with, because you sign a contract that it's fair game to tell whatever story. And I tell people, if you really want to win and you don't want a shitty arc and a shitty edit, then you better win, because they're going to take your loss and then look at it and go backwards and say, okay, you went out here. How do we tell this story? Were you a hero? Were you a villain? Were you an underdog that almost made it to the, whatever? Just be prepared that whatever you're going to do, if you don't see it through, you're vulnerable to the infamous, edit that's there.
The edit.
And I would say the last thing is that, here we are on the verge of the 19th anniversary of our show, and being able to have an interview with two young LGBT members.
Thanks for calling me young.
And that you guys have your own podcast, that you're in the mix in a show that's 20 years old. Hopefully you'll have another 20 years in front of you, and who knows what gifts that'll continue to bring, you all. But what you're doing is important as well, because while I might be your first LGBT guest, I am one. And I think that there's going to be other LGBT members, and I think we'll have non-binary. I think we'll have, a Q that gets to play, maybe an intersex that shows up to play the game. And I think it's going to be really important to showcase and to spotlight those stories in the Survivor pantheon. And those stories remain, to be told. And so hopefully when Survivor comes back, that they'll think about that, not just the BIPOC community that also needs, better representation and better support, but there's others in the community that need help as well, and that need support as well. And if they really want to do it right, then they need to take a wide view of what this looks like. And hopefully we'll see that in these future seasons.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, John. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today. We have one quick game that we want to play with you.
Okay.
We have called this game Marquesas Mishaps.
Oh, God.
Given an everyday activity on the island, explain to me the unusual way that you would get hurt. So I am going to, we're going to put 30 seconds on the clock. I'm going to go back and forth between you and Josh. I will give you the scenario. You explain to me how you would find a way to get hurt in this scenario.
Okay, got it.
Y'all ready? Josh, you will give us our first example, okay?
Okay, first example, John.
No. So you're gonna
I'm
do
doing it.
it.
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, we're starting in 3, 2, 1. Josh, how would you get hurt filling up the jugs at the waterfall?
I'd get strangled in Sarah's breasts and be beaten up by the no-nos.
Okay, John, you are building the shelter. What is the unusual way you get hurt?
I climb on top and the entire thing collapses under my weight and I get impaled in the butthole.
Josh, you're getting the fire going in the morning. What happens?
I sit on it and pee on it, and it just goes.
Okay, finally, John, you are digging for taro root. What happens?
Kathy comes along and I stick her face in the mud and try to drown her before I get voted out.
You hate her. Keep it going. This is fun.
Josh, you're snorkeling for fish. What happens?
I eat the fish in the water.
Okay, finally, John, you make the decision to sleep away from the group. How is that perilous?
How is that what?
How is that perilous? Sleeping
I
away
sleep right next to Kathy, who's also sleeping away from the group.
And that's time. We went for a whole minute. Great job, guys.
Amazing.
Oh, that was too much fun.
That was
John,
good.
it was such a pleasure. Is there anything you would like to plug before you leave other than your eventual return to the show?
No, I mean, probably my only, well, thank you. The only thing I have to plug is we have a farm, Willow Valley Farms. And if you are on Instagram, it's at Willow Valley Farms. We raise the most endangered breed of goat in the world called the San Clemente Island goat. We have 250 of the remaining goats that are there. And we are part of a conservation program to save them from going extinct. And we work with the Livestock Breed Conservancy, and we're working with UC Davis to do DNA profiles and to collect as much genetic information as possible. And so at some point down the road, I'm going to be opening up a foundation. And if they want to go to scigoats.org, they can see our foundation that's there. And we'll be doing some fundraising. And we have a 3.5-legged goat named Taco that had got frostbite on his birthday when he was born. And we're going to be getting him a prosthetic in the spring. And so we'll be doing a fundraiser for that. So just stay tuned with our goat stuff. And if you want to help Taco get a new leg, we'll be giving you the heads up. Or if you want to donate money to help the breed from going extinct, we're going to have some information about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to stop by your farm on my next
We
trip.
both will. Sam, we both can.
Yeah.
I'm coming with you. We'll come visit.
We have a lot of Survivor fans that when they get there, they don't, because Chad kind of runs our tiny house business. We have 2 tiny houses on our farm. So I should probably promote that as well. So we have 2 tiny houses and we're getting ready to do a 3rd one. So people like it because it's contactless. So with the pandemic, you don't have to have, it's all touch key and we clean everything and you never have to see us. So people will go in there and then we have some magazines and stuff that we've been on, and Survivor's like mentioned on one of them. And all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I remember there's a guy from Survivor, da, da, da. And then we'll have some Survivor fan that like, hey, is John home? Can we ask some questions?
We'll organize this. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
Oh, we love it. We love it. We're going to have a whole Survivor tour this summer. We're doing
bike riding with Lindsay.
Victor in You're invited, of
Go
course.
find our tiny houses on Airbnb. Tiny house, Gretna.
She's incredible.
Lindsay's awesome. Back in the day when we were like, traveling around all that stuff, her and I totally hit it off. I haven't seen her in years and years and years and years.
John, she's literally incredible. Like such a fun spirit.
How has she not been back?
Right?
That's the same thing.
You guys both.
And
you guys better find
out
to it.
How has not been back,
We are slowly, I think, interviewing many people who
we're gonna cast
era of Survivor. We're gonna be doing the casting.
We're doing it up. We did Lex. We want Lex back again too. So
yeah.
Oh geez.
We
Yeah.
like the OGs.
John, this has been such a pleasure. You've been so gracious with your time today. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a hoot and a half.
Yep. And you guys can follow us on Twitter, me at Mendels8, Instagram and Twitter. You can follow Sam at Sam Meier Comedy.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I am everywhere. You can also follow the Couch Potato Queens on Facebook. We are the Couch Potato Queens, or on Twitter at Couch Potato Queens. That's QWNZ. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for celebrating the 19th anniversary of Survivor Marquesas.
John Carroll, you're incredible.
John Carroll, you're incredible. You traded the season. Still trade.
Hey, you said I was going to be trade. I was like, well, at least make me be like hot trade. I'm
no,
you were hot trade. You were the hottest guy of the season. Like, I was like, damn, look at those abs. He's got it.
You look great.
Well, I've been hitting the gym just in case they call, because I was like, okay, I don't want to go out there with the dad bod. So I've been hitting the gym just in case. I don't have the 6-pack yet, but it's like a 3.5. So we're getting there.
John, I mean, you definitely, let's be honest, you drank the potion, death becomes her. You look exactly the same as you did 20 years ago. You have not aged.
You look great.
You look incredible.
So Josh, remember, we always remind our audience to what? Outwit, outlast,
and out gay, Henny.
Bye.